September 2016, recording at Mashobra near Shimla in Dhanu and Deepak's home. And they are experienced people of Himachal. He's from Himachal Kedar and worked on Himachal government for long, vast experience. And I met Dhanu first in Spiti at Gaza in 1983 or 87. And I remember I was having cold and he sent a jeep to get some Fudina from Kinnaur, and that's what made us everlasting friends. And so also you start. So introduce yourself first a little bit like this, so it remains on record, and then we'll asking questions. But it's not interview; it is whatever you want to say. Particularly the difference of Himalaya, your experience of staying in Himalaya, which is rare. Nobody has so much stayed in Himalaya as such.
Lots of Himachalis have.
Himachalis have.
Few million.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go.
Start.
As long as you like relax और आराम से चलेगा, बाद में कुछ भी editing भी हो सकता है. Anything can be done. बोलिए.
बोलो.
आप हिमाचल कैसे?
How did you choose Himachal?
Well, when I joined the IAS, we used to be allowed to choose by state. And my first choice was Himachal Pradesh, basically because I loved visiting the hills even when I was a child. I'd always liked coming up to the mountains. And my parents had encouraged it, and we would take frequent holidays in the hills. And so it was this sort of romantic notion of wanting to be in the mountains that brought us to Himachal.
And your first place in Himachal?
Our first location was in Nahan, where I was doing my training as a probationer in 1983. We spent a few months there, and then 84 we went to Rodu when I got my first posting as subdivisional magistrate.
Rodu was in the hills. So
Rodu was deep in the hills.
Yes.
And
today it is not very easily, not many people go.
Yes.
It must be quite an experience. Which year was this?
84, 85. We spent a year there. And
how was Rodu? It's a big town that time?
No, it was a small town, but through the day it would just fill up. It was a very interesting, it is located, in the middle of sort of apple country. And there are a lot of orchards all around in the hills. So it's down next to the river Pabbar. It's at the meeting point of what is called the Shikru Khad and the Pabbar River. And down in the valley. So all around in the hills are orchards. And the orchard owners all seem to congregate through the day in Rodu. They come down in the morning and the bars are full of beer drinkers and...
Or even stronger.
Stronger stuff. And then by evening they all used to go away in their buses. Today I'm sure they drive. There were very few vehicles
off
in those
the road
days,
sometimes. Yeah. But one, sort of enduring image of Rodu was that when you're driving in, you'd a kilometer or two out of Rodu before you reach that little town, you'd see people drunk and walking, sort of weaving and walking. And you knew that you were reaching home.
For me, the abiding memory is that I reached, even before you came, I had gone to join in, I think it was 31st of August, 1984. And the place was so crowded. So I asked my driver, is there a fair? Is there a mela? He said, no, this is an everyday occurrence. So that's when I realized that they just congregate through the day and then they disappear in the evening. And so some part of my job was often to mediate between the bus corporation staff and the passengers, because sometimes in these drunken evenings, there would be fights, and there would be fights with the conductors and drivers of the buses.
They'd all climb on top of
and
the
they'd
bus.
climb on top. And
what was your position there? You were a DC?
I was the subdivisional magistrate, SDM it's called. Yeah.
And Rodu is in district Shimla.
Yeah, so it's part of Shimla district. It's an outlying subdivision.
But that time the Dudhara
It was part of Rodu.
But did you travel?
Yes.
How was it going there? Now also we found it quite difficult.
Yeah, we walked.
Now you can drive up to.
Now you can drive.
On a very bad road.
So we walked. We walked over Chanshil and went down.
Wow.
You must tell stories about what you were told.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
About the wish and all. Yeah.
Which year you Crossed Churchill in
1984. 84. I had crossed into Kwar from Rupin in 82 once. So I knew the area.
And you came from
Kinnaur.
Rancha
Yeah,
that
from
side. Okay.
from Sangla we had gone Sangla Kanda Rupin, and so this was my second trip when I was SDM. But it was very interesting. You know, the subdivisional magistrate in those days in Rodu was sanctioned a horse by the government because there were so many areas you had to walk to, and I don't like riding horses at all.
The story was that
since
I'm such a
won't-
big man and the horse is so small.
They were small horses purchased from Spiti. The Changmurti horses.
Spiti से क्यों लाया उसको?
Because Changmurti is Himachal's breed. So it was felt that we must have a Himachali horse. So these little ponies from Pin Valley. So one pony was there and there was a size, and now the problem was I would not ride. So all those people accompanying me, nobody could ride because I was the senior most guy. So and the size was so upset because we loaded it with the horse with all our luggage because nobody could ride. I wouldn't ride and nobody else would get on, and so we just put all the luggage on it.
And the other option was to put him on an ass, no? On a mule. So they thought you can't
It was
put
quite
the
an
SDM on.
interesting experience
Did you
going
coffee?
over
Yeah.
Chanchil that time. And you know, Dodra, in that entire area, Dodra has I'm sure it still has, it had this reputation for people who would
Be possessed by
and who would
the
then,
local goddess.
and who
It
would
was a
then-
woman always. No, it was not a...
Well, they said it was a household,
Yeah.
and the woman in the household would
Be
have this,
designated and
would get possessed, and then the stranger coming to that house would be poisoned. So people were very scared of going to Dodra because you could nobody would go and eat there. They would pass through the town and they would eat in
carry
anyone's
their own
house.
food. And
So I got a lot of these instructions before going that even in the rest house, be careful who's cooking, because there were these stories how this woman would be, when she is cooking and making the sort of roti, then if she knew that today she has to poison someone, then the roti would stick to her fingers. And that was the sign that today the stranger coming will have to be poisoned.
What poison she will put?
God knows. Nobody spoke about what poisons. It was just like some poison. Maybe something from the forest.
Any murders,
Nothing.
Did you see anyone possessed?
No. Not there.
this was
I've
only
seen otherwise,
hearsay.
but not there.
There was only hearsay.
And what was the story about a wish, you said?
The
So
wish as in...
Wish, poison de denge. So,
but this was both Dodra, Kwar.
no, only in Dodra.
Only Dodra. No,
Only
Kwar.
Dodra. The reputation was for Dodra. So if you stayed in the rest house, you were careful there. So I stayed the night there. We
you
went to
went
the
several
temple.
times or only once?
No, only once as STM I went. But I did an interesting trip. I didn't come back via Dodra. So we went to Kwar, then we went to Jakha. And from Jakha, there was another pass called Tagan Khai, which we crossed back into the upper Pabbar Valley.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a very interesting...
That is very steep.
It was very steep and the horse couldn't go. So the horse was sent back by the old route. Because it was so steep, the horse could not go on it. And the local people would carry their provisions on sheep. So there'd be little packets on the sheep and the goats, 2 kg, 4 kg on either side, strapped onto the goats and sheep, and it would be taken across. So they'd bring salt and stuff like that.
This tradition was
This was still going on. I mean, there was, even in 84, because there were no roads. And then you either walked up from Naitwar in Uttarakhand, now today's Uttarakhand, or you came over the Chanchil, or this Tagan Khai, which was very unusual. So we went over Tagan Khai and descended down to Dyudi. It was a very nice trip. I enjoyed
And
it.
what about some temples in Uttarakhand?
Yes, very...
I believe some of the huge
They're-
ancient temples are there.
Well, they're not ancient in the sense they keep getting redone. So, but very fine wood carving. Even with, nice folksy stuff, but good folksy,
And to
images.
Devi or
Local devtas.
All
They're all
later
local
absorbed into the Hindu pantheon.
but they're all local
yeah,
devtas. So they have relations across even on the Sangla side, and then over on the Uttarakhand side,
And then
in
they
the
visit
Chauhara
each
side.
other also. No?
So the gods visit. And
Picnics and parties.
But what are you doing, Dhanu, and the sides were busy with work?
Well, the boss was busy with work. Our son was less than a year old when we went
He came
there.
to Dodrakwa.
Yeah, no, not to Dodrakwa. We
Rodu.
stayed in Rodu.
But
So
you did not go to Dodrakwa.
No. Sujay was less than a year old. He turned a year in Rodu. His first birthday was in Rodu. So it wasn't easy. I mean, we had a little girl who helped me out with him, and I would walk around with him and go into people's farmhouses and play with. Sujay would play with cows, or we'd walk down to the river, the Pabbar, which is such a beautiful river. And we must tell them stories about our Dudwala.
Come on.
Sheru.
Yeah, but
Sheru,
but
the
it
Gujjar.
was so sad. This lovely blue river, but people used to shit all along the river. So it was horrible walking there. You had to look for spaces that you could. The smell was horrible. Yeah, then our Dudwala you have to.
Yeah, we had a
Gujjar.
Gujjar who would bring milk to
Who was
us.
close to 100 years old.
Yeah, Sheru Gujjar was almost 100 and he had huge feet. You remember? I don't know if you remember. His feet, he wasn't a very tall man, but his feet were
And
so
he was
big.
bent over. He had a beard.
Bent over
And he'd bring us milk.
and that traditions are over now.
Milk from where?
From his,
Gujjar.
yeah, he was a
Yeah,
Gujjar. He
Buffalo.
lived a
Buffaloes.
few kilometers from Rodu and he would come every day with the milk.
And he'd tell us stories about how people
He'd never
died.
show how much water he added to the milk.
Never.
Anyway, the Pambar water is good for you.
No, not with people's shit. Yuck. And he'd tell us stories of how people would dynamite
The fish.
the fish in the river. They just
trout.
steal dynamite from the Public Works Department and sort of blast the fish, and they just die in large quantities.
Why were they doing that?
Pardon?
To eat fish, they didn't want to hang
Oh,
around
they wouldn't hang
fishing.
around to fish.
Angling,
Too
no,
much
no.
of a hassle.
But this I thought was a recent army innovation. Just throw dynamite.
No, it's very old.
Oh, very good.
It's decades old, I'm sure. So the trout was introduced by the British in the Pabbar and its tributaries. And these guys.
And then from this,
So from
the
there,
temple, that Hatkoti temple.
yes, Hatkoti temple's
what
old.
is the story of that?
There are beautiful
You would know all that.
rock temples in Hatkoti and around that area. Pratyahara style, probably dating, our friend Eberhard told us, 8th century.
That is
So quite early. But there are only a few, and local people don't seem to be very concerned about them, and nor is the ASI very bothered. They are not hugely remarkable, but the fact that they exist is remarkable to me in these remote
They're
valleys.
freestanding rock temples with some
No, but they're
incredible-
not monolithic rocks. No.
No, but they are.
slabs
They're
put
not
together.
monolithic,
They're not.
yeah.
They're rock sort of pieces put together,
Huge
but
pieces of
they have
rock.
good. They're good
carvings.
carvings,
They have-
and I mean most of it worn out now, but interesting
No, but
that it
still in
exists.
a-
Even in
you can
Hatkoti
see
there
it.
are a few. Yes, all around Hatkoti. So that was interesting and not much studied. So, Mr. Handa might know something about it.
Yes.
It would be interesting to talk to him.
But does this come under your SDM duties to look after temples or preserve them? Nothing of that.
Well,
The government was not much worried about temples.
you see, temples where there's worship, people are worried about. But many of these were not, living temples where people were worshipping. So, I mean, there was one with a stream flowing next to it, which I remember spending a little time with Eberhard looking at, right next to the road. And it was sort of tilting a bit, and I don't know if it still survives, but it was not
It
worship.
was only much later, I think, when people started realizing the value of the idols. Then
So were
theft
these then
became
lost?
I don't think Hatkoti. There were any thefts in Hatkoti.
No, Hatkoti is
Because-
a living temple, that the main temple there.
But they'd steal out of living temples also.
Yeah, there are occasionally attempts
So-
at theft.
And the ASI is not bothered about.
Well, ASI is also stretched, to these little places they can't really look after. We have to actually find ways of making
Getting
people feel that
community
it's
involved,
their
yeah.
culture and, it's worth
Their
recording,
heritage,
it's their
which they
heritage,
have to-
their legacies, and they need to, be involved with it. Unfortunately, we've never done that in India. We maintain such a distinction between, government and people, because we don't look at government even at very positive way at the local level. So that
And
creates
what
its
about
own
this
problem.
kingdom, Jubbal?
Yes, Jubbal was part of Rodu. Jubbal was part of Rodu. Yeah.
The Rajas and all?
The Raja of Jubbal never stayed in Jubbal. You see, Jubbal as a...
He is the founder of the Himalayan Club. He was the first signing member of the
Yeah.
Himalayan Club in 1928. Raja
But the
of Jubbal.
current Raja of Jubbal, he never stayed there. His family also, they only very occasional. In my entire tenure there, I don't think he visited. Because apart from the palace, the palace in Jubbal, I don't think they owned any property there. The properties were all in Chopal, which is a separate subdivision. The Jubbal kings, their personal properties were all in Chopal. And the old state, once it was absorbed into the union, then they didn't have anything left in this belt, I think. So although they had some areas originally. So they never visited. We never met Raja Jubbal there. We met him in Shimla.
What is the situation then with the states that have all been, that are now part of
Himachal.
What is the reaction of the local people to these rulers when they're there or when they come?
Good question.
Yeah. Well, there is among the older generation, I suspect there is still some respect veneration for the rulers.
But an important point was that there wasn't, and there wasn't so much of an economic disparity between the Rajas and the Praja. So,
Not in the smaller ones. More in the richer ones, yes, the bigger ones. But there were 31 states which were amalgamated, So, and some of them were very tiny.
Seriously.
Some of the feudal sort of locations, here there'll be Balsan here, there is Goont. They were very tiny. For example, the Goont Rana, his son was my boss at one stage, but he was in the IAS also. But his father, for example, retired as a tehsildar.
And they worked in the fields.
They even worked in.
There wasn't like Raja,
the smaller places. Yeah. The bigger places had more, of course, significant.
Bigger were what? Mandi, Sirma.
Mandi and places. Did the Raja have any feeling of responsibility still towards the people, or?
I think it's more a relationship with the deities, less directly with the people, much less. But some of them went into politics and then therefore established much more. So many of them actually went into politics, including our present Chief Minister. And even the Jubbal King was MLA from Chopal.
Yeah, because Jubbal King, at least, and I was surprised, first time I saw his signature in Himalayan Club, founding member, King of Jubbal.
Yeah, that would be the current. It must be the current chap's father. 1928. Yogendra Chand's father.
Yogendra Chand himself must be 80 years old.
No, he's in his 70s, I suppose.
Yogendra How do you find it today? Is it much different? Jubbal and Hatkoti temples?
I haven't been to Dorakwar at all since then. And even to Rodu, what happened in the last 10-15 years was the road to Rodu became horrible. There were some contracts given for improving the road, widening, and then they went into some kind of dispute. It was a Chinese company, and so the road became so bad that it was an adventure to go there. What used to take, about 4 hours in the time when I was ST, and 3.5 to 4 hours from Shimla.
Rodu to Shimla.
It would take 7-8 hours and sort of a horrible road. So
huge ruts.
In the last 15 years, I have not.
Trucks going
I must tell you, 15-17 years, I have not been there for a very long time. So I can't really comment on what it is like today. But in those days, I went even to the source of the Pabbar, walked up, and where they are now, Chandanahan. It's a pond actually, not much of a lake. It's small. It's a little small surrounding rocks. Yeah, it's not much of a lake or anything.
But then how many years you were in Rodu?
1 year.
1 year. And then back to Shimla?
No, from there we went to Spiti.
Directly.
We went to Kaza.
You opted for it, or they always shift you like this?
Well, that's a story. Dhanu
I
has a story for her that.
I'd come to Shimla and had gone to the secretariat with a colleague of Deepak's, and he took me for lunch when all of these young officers were having lunch, and met this person called Vivek Srivastav, who was DC Kinnaur. So I, of course, sort of widened my eyes and said, wow, Kinnaur, very beautiful. So he said, I'm looking for an ADC. Would Deepak like to come there? I said, I'm sure he'd love to go. I hadn't even asked him. We hadn't discussed it. But I said, I'm sure. And Vivek was a young, exciting officer. So it always seemed nice to be able to work with someone like a DC like that. So before Deepak, I think Vivek, then the rest you can tell.
Vivek, that was in Kinnaur, district Kinnaur, but they didn't post me there.
They said this idiot wants to go to Kinnaur, send him to.
Further, you can always send him further.
And also because the ADC didn't want to leave at that time.
Yeah, the ADC in Poo didn't want to leave. Then my boss in Shimla didn't like me too much and wanted me to be sent as far as possible. So all this combined, I was sent to Spiti.
So
I didn't mind
has
that.
A reputation from very early in his tenure of rubbing up his boss. His subordinates adore him, but some
bosses don't like him.
Some bosses haven't liked him.
Yeah. So anyway, I was sent off to
But
Spiti.
at that time, how did you reach Spiti?
We drove up.
Yeah.
Was there a road?
Yes.
Yeah.
The road was there. The road has been there since the 70s from this side, from the Sutlej Valley side.
This was in 83.
This was in 85.
85.
We drove up in August 85. It was...
we stopped. Oh, yeah. And we left from Shimla.
Nobody liked to go to Spiti
That's what.
as a posting. It was very remote. It was very difficult.
12,500 feet, barren, no power, no electricity.
In those days, it used to take 7 days for a post to come or a newspaper to reach. There were no communications. There were no phones. There was nothing. And it was very difficult. It used to snow much more. Winters, you just sort of had to stay there and there was no movement.
No water.
And no IAS officer wanted to go there.
Back. I believe the guy at Kelong comes back or he stays there?
No, he stays there. Everybody stays. No. In Himachal, we have no traditions of coming back. Everybody stays in position. Some people take furloughs, but you're supposed to be there. So nobody likes going there. So when I was posted there, they made I went to see my chief secretary who was visiting Kaza. So when I went to see him before going to Kaza, so he thought I'd come to say, I can't go, you do send someone else. So he was so relieved when I said, no, I just came to inquire when you are going so that I can be in position before you reach there. He said, no, there's no need. You can come later, it doesn't matter. As long as you don't want to cancel, your orders to be cancelled, it's fine. You just come when you want to. And the government was very pleased and said, we will give you a vehicle to go up. You normally wouldn't do these things.
Otherwise, you're supposed
to get onto buses and all and go. But they said, we will give you a vehicle.
Those days,
government car will go, jeep will go and drop you and your family. No problem at all. So I was given a vehicle, a jeep, and we both, with Sujay, we got on with our son.
We left late, we had breakfast, and I think it's the first time Deepak sort of miscalculated
timing.
Yeah, and distances.
We had lunch in Rampur.
Breakfast in Theog.
Lunch in Rampur because the SDM wanted to give us breakfast and then it got late.
Then we thought we would reach Kaza the next day, that same day.
No.
Oh,
there was no question.
Where were we planning to stay?
We were to stay in Kalpa, PO, somewhere, some rest house. Some
you've
rest
forgotten.
House. No, Dhanu, I know that much. I know my distances and I know how
anyway,
long
I
it
still
takes.
hold on to the story that we, as far as he was concerned, we were going to reach somewhere near Kaza or short of Kaza. So in Bhavanagar, Vivek Srivastav, the DC, Kinnaur, was there. So we stopped. Someone said, oh, Disa bethe. So we stopped, and that's when Deepak, I think, met him for the first time. Met him for the first time. And he said, are you mad? You can't reach Kaza today. You come and stay with us. Tonight you stay in Kalpa. Vivek was another one of those hospitable people who constantly loved having people over. So then we went to his house in Kalpa, and it was 15th August. Next day. So then Deepak and he went for flag hoisting and stuff. And then the day 16th we left for Kaza. So, and I thought, if Kalpa is so beautiful, oh my God, I'm sure. And Kalpa is at its best in August. there's not much fruit, it's there, but the flowers are in abundance. The sky is beautiful. It's like paradise.
So the next day then you can easily reach.
Yeah.
There were no eating places.
8-9 hours. But in those days, it was very difficult to find a place to eat food or anything on the way.
Nothing.
So, there was one sort of excuse for a dhaba in Yangthang which gave you dal chawal, if you were lucky.
Yeah.
But it was kind of tough. It was a very difficult time in those days to go up and down those roads. There was nothing.
So you have to come several times. So once you posted, you're there.
Well, once a month approximately, you'd have a meeting and you'd come down to Shimla or something. Yeah, about once a month.
It's quite a bit of travel.
Yeah, roughly once a month you'd come.
And Sujay,
Yeah, but when you're young, you want to do it. You don't want to be stuck there also. So you're happy to get out once a month, and experience sort of city life.
You get Tabo, Dankhar, all those monasteries that you went later.
just take a minute.
Actually, that day we didn't stop in Tabo when we were going up. And in fact, we had a lot of adventure going up. First, the vehicle heated up on the car loops, the jeep from Shimla. Then we somehow carried on. And then at Samdo, you remember Samdo, which is the border of the administrative area of Spiti. So there, from Kaza, they'd sent a separate vehicle for us, another jeep. So we thought this person knows the road well. So we got onto that jeep and had the Shimla jeep accompany us. In any case, it was heating up. But we didn't realize that jeep was probably a little worse. There was some leak in the petrol tank or something. And this idiot of a driver didn't even seem to realize it. We ran out of fuel. Short of Kaza. But we made it somehow. But, it approaching darkness at 7 in the evening, we reached Kaza. So we didn't stop in Tabo.
Very nice.
In Kaza? No, there was only the monastery. Mud monastery rooms, and one corner of it was where we stayed in 2 mud rooms.
No government bungalows.
There was none. We started it. It was later completed about 2 years after I left. I started the construction. No, we stayed in those mud rooms. There were no loos. There was nothing for your ablutions. You had to go for your morning job. You had to walk out and.
SDM must have go out.
Yeah, ADC, Additional Deputy Commissioner, had to walk out, and you had there was a sort of 4 walls and a hole in the ground.
Still, the boss going out now is unheard of.
So there was this. My predecessor had made a loo. Yeah, he had made a loo, but he had just made it. So nobody had tried it out. And come winter, it completely choked and froze. So you couldn't use it. That's what happened. It froze. I remember now. Whatever water you poured in it just froze and came up. So you could use it. So by November, it was impossible to use it because everything was freezing. By September 15th, temperature started dropping to 0. Yeah, to 0. And at night, by the second half of October, I distinctly remember temperatures at night were already below 10, minus 10. They were below minus 10 at night. Yeah, and by January, of course, it was minus 15 in the daytime, minus 35 at night. And
how do you keep yourselves
warm? We just steam coal. We used to burn steam coal in Bukharis and 24 hours.
And then nothing grows in that temperature. So then where does food come from?
No, so we used to dry vegetables, cut them up and dry them, and there would be frozen eggs which you would warm up to eat, and that was it.
But
beans.
The population, what they would have stored their grains.
Everybody, the population ate, as you know, sampa.
But they wanted to gather it in summer months.
Yeah, that one crop in summer. Spiti was quite a granary in the old days. So it traded with the Changthang, the shepherds of Rupchu and Changthang. With Pashmina, they would barter the butter and the grain, the barley. Spiti was known for its barley.
So they looked after themselves well with food and everything.
Yeah, they were healthy people. And frugal, but all right. And that is true even if you read the British accounts 150 years ago. They were healthy, frugal people. Of course, it all started changing with government because government started upsetting the whole old social structures and systems.
Which way would be that?
You see what? The traditional systems are very simple. To keep population in check in these frugal areas, the systems of social organization was that only the eldest son would get married and the eldest daughter. The other siblings went to the monastery. And only in Pin Valley, where the Nimmas sect was prevalent, there, although even there they all became monks, but they were allowed to cohabit with the older brother, in a sense, with the spouse of the older brother. But in the rest of Spiti, it was very strict, sort of Gelugpas and Sakya sect. So both of them were quite strict about monastic life for the monks. So, so that kept population in check. The younger siblings would go off to monasteries and nunneries, and so there would be the concept was that there's the big house in Spiti, it's called Badaghar. So in a father's lifetime, the oldest son would inherit the big house. And the old people would move with the younger siblings to the small house, the Chota Ghar. And then the kids would go off to the monasteries. So it was the responsibility of the big house to be patron and look after the old people and the smaller siblings, as long as they observed the rules of the game, which was you go to the monastery. Then your contribution of grain, etc. is made to the monastery, you look after things and all that. But what government did after it came post-independence is, it suddenly opened up the possibility of alternate ways of income. It started employing people. And when it employed people, the big house owners were actually preoccupied with managing the estate and their affairs. So it was the younger siblings who became government employees in large numbers. I mean, whatever employment was being offered was picked up by younger siblings. So with employment came the ability to have your own income and get married. And so what you witness in Spiti is a population boom suddenly in the post-independence years. From about 4,000 people, that was all in 1951 census.
Whole district?
Whole of Spiti, yeah. The not district was Lahore and Spiti. So just 7,500 square kilometers with 4,000 people in 1951 census. Yeah. And by the 1981 census, it was 10,000 plus. But a lot of it was labor, outside labor, which came to work on irrigation, power project, things like roads. So it has now ended up sort of stabilizing at the 9,000-10,000 mark of late. We find all the census are showing it became 9,000 something in 91 and it's still around. It's around.
Now that
a lot of the outside labor is gone, which was over 3,000 people, 4,000. So the own population has grown to stabilize at around, I think, 10,000.
And the old systems, the social systems,
yeah, continue.
So the younger siblings are still monastic?
No, very little. They are all going into jobs, they're all getting educated.
So that's the old social systems have changed and they've gone forever.
Yeah, but the number of children are probably stabilizing. So I suppose will stabilize now at 10. What has changed so society has changed in this way that there are still, so from a traditional angle, it's still the Badaghar, it's still the oldest son who will inherit all the property and the oldest daughter who will get all the jewelry when she gets married.
The oldest son marries the oldest daughter.
Daughter of another family. So they still inherit everything. So that tradition remains. But the younger siblings, apart from employment, what was the other change was land. Government brought irrigation. So fresh areas could be cultivated. So those cultivated fresh areas would be given to landless, younger siblings. And so even while I was there, we were already distributing a lot of land to younger siblings. But the irrigation schemes were still in their infancy. And the other issue was what to grow. There was no point in just growing barley or potatoes for local consumption. That was not a source of income. So while we were there, first changes started coming. The changes were two. the lower valley got apple. And as global
They were
warming...
introduced by Himachal government.
Yes. And local, by association from the neighboring areas. So Kinnaur had apple right up to its last villages. And so those stock, you would bring cuttings or rootstock from there and try it out in the lower areas of Spiti. So from the first villages in lower Spiti, today, apple has even been planted right up to almost Kaza. Of course, the production is not much near Kaza, but in the lower belt, production is big. Truckloads are going out.
Apple is brilliant because the air is still comparatively disease-free. So the apple
and it's all irrigated land, so there's no disease, and you get regular watering,
and it comes later than.
So that was one
most
change.
Of the other apple has
and then the bigger change for the rest of Spiti was peas, which we grew for the first time when I was there. We started planting green peas. So off-season, as a cash crop, it's become the biggest.
Not the black, not the kala matti.
No, not green. The peas which come to table. So those are grown and they are harvested in July, August. And that's the time when we introduced the first lot of green peas.
Wherever I would trek, we thought peas is their traditional crop for generations.
No, those are the black peas, not this new green peas.
Just pick it up and start.
So those are, when they dry, they become black and they are used in sattu. They're very highly nutritious.
Good protein. So they are ground with the sampa, with the barley in the sampa. So peas has become a major crop now in the whole of Spiti, in the upper villages. The lower villages are apple, and the upper villages are all pea growing now. So even the highest villages, you'll remember, Langza, up on the pastures, they all grow peas. Spin Valley, Losar, everywhere you'll find peas today. And truckloads of peas go out in summer from Spiti. So that is another source of income for the chota ghar, the younger siblings.
So in the old days, the education would have been through the monasteries.
Yeah, whatever
that will have changed now. So
totally.
What happens now with education, health? Because those were all controlled by the monasteries or monitored by
Yes. Education was basically of the scriptures, and it was in the Tibetan language and only restricted to some of the monks who might do it. In fact, His Holiness, I remember telling me in 92 when he came to Kinnaur, when I was DC there later, that his first sort of experiences of Spiti, he came to Spiti for the first time, I think, in 83. And he said, they were very indisciplined, the monasteries. The monks would be drunk. And he sent the first, the teachers, the Tibetan teachers to these monasteries. So Tabo got its Geshe-la from Tibet, the Tibetan Geshe. And then of course, the Rinpoche from Kiev was sent out to learn to South India and to Dharamsala and all. So all that started changing with all that period when the roads started coming and all that. So, so schools went everywhere and, people started learning, and Hindi has become, language has changed, everybody speaks Hindi today, and there are lots of government servants. I did a monograph on Spiti in 96, 97. It's called Changing the Desert Landscape, about the changes which government has brought into Spiti and how it's changed. I suppose one can update it 20 years on now, and it would be just a question of seeing that those kind of changes which we documented in 96, 97 have just accelerated, and it's changed. The economy has changed quite dramatically. So by the 90s, actually, we were very worried that it's becoming even more dependent on government. But now with peace, that dependence has actually lessened, and tourism. The third thing is tourism. Tourism has also come.
But it not brought any bad effects?
It has, tourism is not that huge, fortunately, like Ladakh, but it does have some implications for, the fossils have vanished. For those which we could just pick up when we walked on the upper pastures, you don't find them anymore because they're all gone, they're all sold out. So, but tourism has not been very destructive, I think, to Spiti yet, unless it really picks up. But it is still, I mean, there is garbage issues, there are sanitation issues which have emerged with the influx of people. And they need to be sorted out. They are not, we still haven't addressed them fully. So economy has changed, culture has been changing, society has changed, and climate has changed quite dramatically. Yes, I remember years of very heavy rainfall, snowfall in the winters of 85, 86. Fairly heavy snowfall, complete white cover from about end November to almost till April end in Kaza. And after that, these kind of heavy snowfall years have become less and less frequent. Except in the last few years, suddenly they told me. When we went, Dhanu and I visited last year. We went and spent a few days in Spiti last year. And they all said that in the last 3-4 years, snowfall's gone up again. I don't know if it's a long-term trend or it's just a blip or what.
And now, where did you all trek and travel? I mean, in Spiti, mountain areas. What are your mountains you observed, saw? You met any expedition?
Yeah, I met you in 87. And
where else we have trekked? Because
I met a very interesting Bengali expedition. I don't know if I told you. No. They came. They came as usual in their rubber slippers and their balaclavas. I mean, they travel after that, rubber slipper and balaclava. And this gentleman came into my office and said, I want to meet the ADC. I said, yeah, come and sit. And what do you need? How have you come and what is your... We've come to climb Chow Chow Kangnila. Huh? I said, okay, so what is your plan? How many days? And we'll go up today. We came by the night bus. We will go up today to Lanza and day after we'll climb. 1 week we will go back. I said, you have to acclimatize. You're at 12,500 feet and really why don't you acclimatize and then go up to Langza after 2 days and spend a little time, then you climb. No, we don't have that much time. And I have a letter from the Speaker of the Vidhan Sabha of West Bengal for you. You have to give us whatever help we need. I said, we'll help you. Don't worry. We don't need letters for that. But I sincerely advise you to stay here. No, I don't have time.
No, and that acclimatization thing he said.
Last year. Last year we went. Last year we'd gone. We are acclimatized. I said, there's very difficult to argue with such
rubber
people.
chappals, balaclava.
So we gave them a tractor. In those days, the road went up halfway to Langza. There was a road halfway, not the full distance. So we gave them a tractor. You put your stuff and go. Of course, I saw them within 6-7 days. They were back. Of course, they hadn't gone very much beyond Langza. They didn't look like they were capable of going very far. But it was an interesting experience, nevertheless.
And living in that house, did you tell them about the house?
Yeah, you must tell.
Oh my God. That house was something. It was a part of a monastery. It was the total population of Kaza those days were 300 souls?
No, it was in summer it was 800.
Okay. And largely men because they'd get posted, families would be out. And the house was a kilometer away from the village. It was just one gunpa. One part of the house, one part of the gunpa was made into Deepak's office and a part of it was our house. So we had three rooms and a veranda.
Yeah, we'd expanded to a third room.
Third room. We'd taken it over. And on the other side, it was a U-shaped thing and one side of the two arms of the U were houses and offices and the back was where the monks lived. And through winter, the monk was in Maun Vrat, so he would not meet anyone. And it was very quiet, and someone would keep food outside, and he would take it and not sit. And our house had thick mud walls, solar electricity, which we promptly, our fridge was kept in the house, so it was a tourist attraction. People would say, "Ye kya hai?" So I say, "Khana garam rakhne ke liye." So there were mud walls. The ceiling was about 8 feet high.
No, less.
7 feet high. And it had cloth underneath because it was all adobe, all dhajji. And if you took off by mistake, you didn't realize you were standing and you took off your
it's not
sweater.
Dhajji.
What is it?
It was just mud.
It was just mud. Okay. And if you took off your sweater or your t-shirt over your head and it hit that, you'd be covered in dust. And we had bukharis, which kept the rooms warm. And the first winter, we took Sujay down to Delhi, and I left him with Deepak's mother, who said, "What a bad mother, leaves her child and goes away." Next summer, they came to visit us, and she told me, "You take care of my son, I will take care of yours." She realized how difficult it was, And we didn't have those sort of thermals and warm clothes, and it was difficult. And like idiots, we both bathe every day in winter.
In the kitchen?
In the kitchen, because that was the only warm place. Someone walked down with a mule and 2 jerry cans, made a little hole in the
Kaza Nala.
In the nala, filled it mug by mug, brought it back, then water would be heated, and we would sit in the kitchen. There was a little area where they washed the dishes, and we'd bathe in that. Initially, when we came, we were very excited. Locals, dancing, drinking. So we drink chang regularly and then get loosies. And then we'd have to wear all our clothes and then walk down an open corridor to the end where there was a room with a hole in the floor.
Well, a chaksa, locally.
So you had to sit
Local
on that
chaksa.
floor. The lower room had only 2 walls. So there was everything froze midair. It was, and then you carried blue paper. Water would also, imagine washing your butt with cold water. So then I think we cut down our drinking after a couple of bad midnight experiences of bad stomach. But
It was very interesting. There was nobody, as Dhanu says. There was only this monk who was in meditation, and there was a chowkidar monk, another one, who was not a very disciplined monk. So he would get drunk, and then he would hallucinate. He would see ghosts. So every frequent entertainment was him shouting and trying to disperse the ghosts and fight with them. Next door.
And the house was, there were what?
4,000 liters.
4,000 liters of petrol stored in drums
below the
house that we lived
That was
in.
the store, because there were no petrol pumps.
Can you imagine? And we had these fires, Bukhari. We had Bukharis to keep us warm. And
Fortunately, there was never an incident.
There was never an. It was just so bloody cold, that it wasn't, I presume there were no fumes and stuff that would catch.
Could happen, but fortunately it was well insulated. I suppose.
What was well insulated?
The flooring.
Well, usual mud floors.
Yeah, mud is good
But
insulation.
that was, and our son Sujay used to be with us in summer. I remember first when we went, I washed my hair. This was August we went, then again we came back and went up again in November, October. And it was beautifully sunny outside. And I washed my hair and I thought I'd stand out in the sun and dry it. Didn't realize the temperature was -15. When I went out and everything froze and I got a head cold. I was really ill for a couple of days. But it was really one of the...
hair cutting and all.
Oh, I had a barber in the office.
Officially allotted.
Official barber, yes. There was a position of a barber in the Spiti office, official. And what else? There was a dhobi and a sweeper. And all these positions were created old in the Punjab times, because Lahul Spiti was part of Punjab. So these were old positions which were created very long ago.
And communication, letters, post.
No, 7 days. 7 days. It used to come by runner.
No telephone.
Mail used to travel by runner from Samdo. Despite the fact that roads had come and buses would ply, the posts had not shifted their systems. So they still had runners who would come in stages, and from Samdo to Kaza was 4 days by runner. It was very interesting. And the newspaper would come.
We'd go for walks in the
How long were you there?
2 years.
We'd
plus.
go for
2 years plus.
We'd go
Over
for
2 years.
walks and no lotions, no sunscreens. You know how it was. So nose would run, then everything would freeze on the tip of your nose. So you'd do this.
And then sunburn.
So I met someone who'd met me in Spiti like 5 years later, and she looked at me and said, was Saab married to your older sister earlier? So I said, why? So she said, नहीं वो बहुत बुड्ढे लगते थे, because the sun, and we were walking and we just use oil, na? I mean, और क्या chulli का apricot kernel oil, we lather on and go for a walk. So skin wrinkled, burnt completely.
Yeah,
But,
winter was
tough,
kind of
was
strong,
difficult.
and all the roads were blocked. So I would walk to villages in winter through the snow. So while it was sunny, it was possible. It was nice to walk. But the moment the sun went down, it was
And those drives there were like paradise, because from Sabdo onwards, you've been to the area, you've seen how gorgeous. You'd see ibex.
In winter, you'd see ibex down next to the Spiti. It was for us an every time occurrence. It wasn't as if we missed out anything. Every time we drove out of Kaza, to downstream towards Samdo, near Lara, there would be ibex on the other side of the road.
Very beautiful. Fox, snow fox with all its snow.
Today there is a temple. They made a big temple in Gyu village,
Oh yeah.
where we first saw of this sort of mummy. They discovered this lama in a meditation pose. When I was ADC, I got this message from Gyu that, the mummy has been found, please. So I went to see what had happened. So the ITBP had a post in Gyu. So they were digging some trenches and all, some fortification trenches. And the pickaxe struck something, and then they exposed it and found that pickaxe had gone into the scalp of a...
The skull.
Yeah, the skull was... No, it was a scalp. It had hair, it had everything. It was well preserved.
Nails, huh?
It was very well preserved. So then today they made a big temple out of it. So they still kept it, and they have a temple.
Now you can drive up.
Now you can drive up to Gyu. I used to walk up. Yeah.
That must be really exciting.
Very exciting.
Those times were really amazing.
And how did you get to know about Harish?
Oh, that is the sweetest story. Oh my God. Deepak came. I mean, there were so few visitors, and he said, I met someone, and he's come from Bombay, and I've called them to dinner.
I don't know.
Don't remember.
Something.
They came to tea, and then we kept them on for dinner
Dinner,
or something.
possibly.
And he came, and he had got me Alfonso mangoes in Spiti. You'd carried, I don't know
It was
how many, but
It was May.
yeah, and you had come. And eating Alfonso, I mean, that was like... And then, of course, one found out so many connections, that...
But I have to interfere. What had happened was, Harish had a very bad cold.
I was about to say,
And we sent...
And you sent Pudina chutney for him.
What
so
about
a jeep to Kinnaur to pick up the next day. Then with the Sudhir, I was cured.
that
He was a
helped?
bath also.
I'm sure the jeep was going anyway.
Must be.
Shush, now don't spoil all this.
No, that's what you'd like to say for official government records.
Yeah, that you don't
Understand.
sell. You don't send jeeps to get Pudina from.
Yeah.
But it was Spiti in
Now,
the
you were
month.
very, very kind to us. All of us, you thoroughly remembered. Since that day, always. Dhanu was the
I still
We
remember
were
they all
and
coming.
we were so
and-
thrilled to have
think you
visitors.
And
I
you
think
came
you.
with us to Lalung village.
Yeah.
Managed porters and
Yeah.
so they were all behaving very nastily. So we said, "Chalo, what is up?" There are crowd this time.
And Deepak would
Then
get
we behaved
paid to walk. So he'd walk for a
I-
whole day and then
No,
earn
that-
enough to buy a
our-
packet of cigarettes.
No, our rules were very nice. No? They said you get 1 rupee a kilometer for walking
In the tribal areas. In the tribal
in the
areas.
tribal areas. Not here. Here it was 25 paise in those days. Now I don't think there's any such thing left.
No
But
one
in those days I
walks.
used to get 1 rupee a kilometer.
And he'd walk 40 kilometers, go in the morning, come back in the evening, unfazed at those heights.
And how did the locals react to someone in your position? What was the relationship? Because you were an interloper to many of the...
Sorry?
You were
You're an outsider,
An
basically.
Yeah, I was an outsider. Well, I was the head of the administration. So there was that whole... So obviously, the typical sort of
Lad
relationship
sab,
of the
my
boss,
baap,
of some kind of patron from whom you go for work or to get
Did
things
anything
done.
to do with, northern states, Tibet or Changtang?
No,
or
nothing.
anything with the Chinese side?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. All peaceful. And
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
But there was
that
a very
story.
pleasant
You had-
relationship because I was, I think, after a long time, someone who spent time there. Because, as I said, people don't don't like getting posted or doing things there. So it was, I think, we built a very nice relationship with many villages because I would visit. Not only was I posted there, that unlike many of my predecessors, I loved walking. So I went to every village possible, every place possible. So that created its own.
Sorry. We should have lunch soon because we have to leave at 3. It's 1
half
o'clock.
an hour more?
Half an hour? 1:30?
At least.
So I would visit all the villages, and all the monasteries, and go for I'd go even for weddings. I would go for, in the winter. Weddings was in really cold weather because that's when everyone's free. And the fairs, all the festivals would be in winter. And I would hang around and go everywhere. So I think to this day, I have good relations with various people from Spiti. And as Dhanu would say, what was the kind of bribe you got in Spiti? It was very interesting.
I was asked, I went down to Bombay. In Bombay, everyone, when they heard lived in Spiti, where we got nothing. We dry our own tomatoes, the first sun-dried tomatoes. And we make malas out of bhindi and gobi and French beans and dry them. So I used to tell people stories about this. So they'd say, what is Deepak's salary? So I'd say whatever it was, 1,000 rupees, 1,100 rupees.
No, it was much more handsome.
Okay. So then
3,000.
So that is okay. But what does he get under the table? So then I'd say, Acha, you really want to know? So in summer, people would bring yak milk curd made into sort of lassi. In those Nestle dabbas, with used powder milk, fresh milk, thane. And, they'd leave it under his table because they were too embarrassed to hand it over. So then someone would pick it out from under his table and bring it into the house. And it was sour as hell. It had long yak hair. Oh, God. It was like quite...
It wasn't something which one could use very much of. But it was interesting. But in their own simplicity, they would feel that they are visiting the big boss and they're coming with an application. They must leave something. It was very touching.
Yeah.
And
it was all kept under the table. Or churpe. People used to give a lot of churpe.
The dry whey cheese, which Tibetans eat.
Yeah, they keep chewing on it when they walk.
I don't like that stuff.
But our kids, our son and we became very fond of chaza, the namkeen chai.
Yeah, that we would have a lot of.
We have a lot of.
We used to call it chaza.
Chaza.
Cha means chai and za is salt.
Ladakh, I think that the gurgur tea or something.
Gurgur is what they make it in, or the dongmo. It's actually the dongmo. It's all gurgur. Yeah, because it's called gurgur because it makes that sound.
You went to Tibet?
Yeah, she's been to Saparanga. Gurgur. Yeah, so the dongmos are made a lot in Kinnaur, not in Spiti so much. But so Spiti was very interesting and.
So this is not public, no? This won't go public. I must tell you a very interesting story without names. Okay. we have these very dear friends. We won't take names, and we came down to Delhi for their wedding, and we took them to Spiti for their honeymoon. And sorry. So next morning, I sort of looked at her and I said, So she said, too breathless, couldn't do anything, and we had got used to it, so we were a little better at whatever. So, but they couldn't because both of them at 12,500 feet couldn't breathe. So then we rushed them down to Kalpa, to 9,000 feet the next day, and put them independently in the circuit house so that they could do what they were supposed to do on honeymoon. That was...
For a long time, her friends didn't forgive her for telling this story to others.
Someone who worked in his office. I said, oh, you know what happened? Like that. But now they also laugh at it.
And With the monasteries, you had no other relationship except just going and visiting them.
The official relationship. Yeah, it was, but it was nice. I mean, with Tabo, which was getting organized, with
my God.
Ki, where
And
the
we knew
young
where-
Rinpoche would come with toilet paper.
To our house. No, he asked for toilet
First
paper.
he came the first day with a long holder,
Cigarette holder.
filter, and a cigarette in it, and sat in
And
my
asked for a
office
Coke or
and asked
something.
for something, I don't know,
Which we
and
didn't
smoked
have.
his cigarette. And the young Rinpoche, he was 22. He was so young in those days. And now, of course, I still meet him.
And
He's so
Tabo
much
was
older.
so simple because there were no visitors. We knew where the keys were hidden. So if you were driving past and you had someone who you wanted to show, you could just reach out and pull out the key
Yeah.
and
And walk
open the
into
lock
the
and walk
temples.
in, you
Walk
know,
into
to
the
all the
temples.
temples.
And now what things have changed.
Oh, yes.
So what are your
Completely.
reactions on that? Is there
It's necessary. You have to keep things locked now. You put all
No, but
go.
I mean, is tourism or present development is having a good effect,
Big.
bad effect?
Well,
Could
it's
be controlled, changed?
all change. I mean, if you can improve, nothing like it. I mean, solid waste is a
Yeah.
mess.
Kaza
Sanitation is a bit of a problem. People need, I think, to understand the value of their heritage and their culture and preserve it. In a sense, they need more on that. And you need better role models. The role models are contractors, cheating the government and conniving with the officials to cheat. The role models are people who try to get government jobs and not do their jobs. So role models are not good, even in Spiti, like elsewhere in India, but it becomes even more sort of evident in Spiti.
But the
That
people
certainly
are
mean-
still
people are still
at
good at
heart,
heart. I
they're
mean, and I think if you
simple.
create better role models, people will just aspire to the right things and will do the right things rather than trying to.
When you see
Get
so
away
many
with-
tourists, young people in fancy cars driving up, you know, and then driving through and spending money, and you know, it does have an impact upon the locals, understandably. And you can't say no development because we are sitting with everything.
We sent the first, you know,
Oh, yeah, you
this
have
was
to.
some special area games were started in the 1980s by Government of India. The whole idea of creating sports person from remote areas and special skills they might have. So one of the things they picked up was archery. And so I had this friend and batchmate who was in charge of this in Delhi, and he said, "Don't you have any archery in Spiti? Why don't you try?" And I said, "Yeah, Spiti, there was some playful archery, you know, the old tradition of just shooting some arrows at Dachang.
certain
In February, you had
festival,
this
yeah.
festival called Dachang, and you know, you shot this arrow for warding off evil and all. And there was no real sort of big tradition of archery, but there were bows and arrows around and all. So I said, okay, we'll have a competition and we'll pick up kids who do well and we'll send them for training to Delhi. And you know, it's such a nice story actually, because we picked up, so we went to Pin in December. I walked across to Pin and held a competition because Pin was meant to have more archery tradition. And we picked up 2 or 3 young lads, and their parents agreed, and we said we'll send them to Delhi for further training in modern archery.
And one of them
And
was-
then in Kaza also we held a competition. And in Kaza, my office peon who attended to my office, sharing, he said, he'd been telling me for some time, he said, "So this beta hai, Kaldang, kuch nahi karta, shaadi bhi kar diya iska." Little lad, you know, he was very young, he was 18 or something or 17, उसका शादी कर दिया, वो पढ़ा भी नहीं, उसको बोलो उसको कुछ कर दो, ऐसे क्या करना है, वीडियो पार्लर चलाना है, उसको वो भी नहीं ठीक से चलाता, क्या करें? अच्छा वो आर्चरी में भेजो, देखें एरो शूट करता है, he topped, he was the best, so I sent him off to Delhi. And you won't believe it, Carl Zhang became India's best archer.
Wow.
He won gold medals in in the games here. He went on to win medals in competitions in Beijing, in Switzerland, and whereon. And young Carl Zhang, who was just a podgy little boy in those days,
running a video parlor.
running a video parlor, became a handsome, trim, looking really nice young man over time. And then the government of Himachal gave him a job as a policeman. And today he's there in Kaza.
And he used to write letters to Deepak when Deepak was in finance department say, Honorable Finance Minister.
I was a deputy secretary or joint secretary or something. He was so sweet, Kaldan. So Kaldan Dorje and we maintain a relationship to now till this day. And
But even now when we go to Kaza, or even driving through Spiti, if people find out that he's come, I'm just the add-on. But there is still a lot of people who will stop the car on the road and will meet him and say, Chai chaza, they remember we like chaza, they'd carry chaza and khataks and that is
it's very good, no? It feels very good.
Nice.
Some people will still remember in every village.
I think you've done a good job there. That is what is exactly the. Otherwise, government officials are frankly hated.
in these areas, I suppose so.
Yeah.
So we
So
can
we've done
later-
Spiti today.
We've done Rodu and Spiti.
Over Spiti, and
Sham
now
ko?
the major thing is
Kinnaur.
Kinnaur and your other views on present day.
So we'll do that.
So that we
Next
will
time.
keep it. Thank you very much.
Tomorrow.
Now you've broken the ice. Now you can do it.
Yeah, and we have recorded for 1 hour and 10